Hi everyone, Paul here with an ear from men. I'm going to start today's talk with a couple of related items. First, to give you a heads up, Tom Golden of Men Are Good channel is beefing up his video productions with more content. For anyone who doesn't know, Tom is a licensed clinical social worker who has worked for decades with men, specializing in grief and loss. Some very important work. He also launched a Patreon page and has been busy adding a great deal of additional videos for Patreon supporters. I put a link in the low bar for anyone interested in supporting Tom and his very fine work for men and boys. Also, I'm leaving tomorrow for a trip to the UK where I've been invited to appear with Cassie J, Aaron Pitsey, Mike Buchanan, and others for a screening of the Red Pill movie, which, by the way, just won Best Film Award at the Idlewild Film Festival today. The UK screenings will be held on the 18th and 19th in Norwich. I also understand that 3 feminists have been invited to appear on the panel for the Q&A, which should make things interesting. If you're in the Norwich area and want to attend, I have placed a link in the low bar. As I understand it, admission is free. And now on to today's talk. The folks on my Patreon page recently participated in a patrons-only poll I put out about the subjects you wanted to see me cover in future efforts. The results were really informative, with patrons showing a strong interest in many topics, and particularly in self-respect and well-being. So, for today's talk, I'm going to give you part 1 of a Paul's eye view on men's general well-being. As always, the standard disclaimers apply. Nobody has a one-size-fits-all answer to these questions. Your needs and results will vary. Also, this overview is not meant to be complete, nor could any single discussion cover every significant point of such a complicated topic. Okay, now that I have all the legal stuff out of the way, I want to propose that for most men, there are 4 essential elements to walking a path of self-respect and general well-being. I'm going to cover the first 2 in this talk. The first is moving through your family of origin issues, and everyone has family of origin issues. It doesn't matter if you had the greatest mom and dad in the world, or the worst, or no mom and dad, or no mom. We all carry some sort of wounding from our families. If you watched my video, Playing Your Own Role in Life, which is linked in the low bar, I talked about the roles that we get cast to in families, which are loosely related to birth order, but which really have much more to do with dysfunction in the family. Dysfunctional families generally have low tolerance for individualism. They need people, more specifically the children, to play roles that serve the family's dysfunctional needs. They need a hero, someone to give the family honor and standing. They need a scapegoat, someone to blame, someone on which to smear the blood of family sins before sending them into the desert. They need quiet, lost children, needless kids who have no demands to put on the already stressed family unit. And they often need family mascots, budding comedians who de-stress the family with humor. The point is that all these roles serve the purpose of keeping the family in balance, in a lasting stasis that allows the family to operate without ever really looking at the dysfunction behind it all. There's a cost to that, though. When filling a role for a family, the self gets denied and ultimately buried. Family mascots are really good examples of that. As I said, they're budding comedians, turning the family stress into humor, serving as a distraction. Sometimes they grow up to be professional comics, or simply the life of every party. They often grow up depressed and prone to suicide. The family scapegoat is another great example. How many men raised as family scapegoats end up condemned to being the black sheep for life? They can have all the appearance of being a rebel without a clue, or just being an easily and irrationally angered person. Often they'll act out with violence, have substance abuse issues, drinking problems, and relationships marred by turmoil. Many are destined for criminal justice problems. This can last well into their adult lives as the family scapegoat continues to react to and even recreate their judgmental, condemning family in the world around them. This can continue long after parents are dead and the family of origin is a thing of the past. So the task for the scapegoat, and I argue the same task for almost all men, is to first recognize that they are not living their own lives. They are simply living what their dysfunctional families stamped out for them. They're following a familial script, one that they didn't write, running on a hamster wheel of resentments and anger, feeling betrayed in life and seldom achieving any real measure of well-being. Even family heroes, surrounded by all the trappings of success, are subject to the dissatisfactions and frustrations of the identity crisis, even if they're more prone to live in a protective denial about how they got there. Once a man recognizes that he is not really living his own life, his objective is then to reject the old scripts. He rejects the role set out for him by his family and quits seeking to get their approval or to change their judgments. This path can be pretty tough. Once the scapegoat recognizes the family setup, the dysfunction that placed him in the role that dominated his life, his reaction is usually a feeling that he's all too familiar with: anger. And this anger, born of the realization that he is not the loser or misfit that his family has always tagged him as being, can be the most intense anger of his life. It is kind of like a form of a red pill rage, the type of anger you get when you realize that you've been sold a pack of lies about life and about your place in it. It is the anger that a man can feel when he realizes that all his previous efforts to earn the love that he imagined his siblings were getting were pointless, that it wasn't because he was unlovable, which is what he has always secretly believed, but because his family was incapable of loving him in a way that was healthy and wholesome. This is a point where even highly conscious men can go off the rails. Rather than the insight easing their suffering, it creates more of a sense of injustice, of being cheated out of the love and respect they deserved as children. Rather than resolve the loss and move on, they instead bring that sense of longing and betrayal into their adult relationships. And this brings me back full circle to what I meant earlier when I referred to moving through your family of origin issues. As justified and even self-satisfying as the righteous indignation about your family's dysfunctional treatment may be, it won't move you through anything. Resentment is a circular emotional mindset. In fact, the word resentment, from the French word ressentir, literally means to re-feel. It is the taking of a trauma, a hurt in life, and re-experiencing it over and over again. It always leads back to square one, with nowhere to go but back to the anger. Nowhere to go but nowhere. Anger is a healthy and necessary part of grief, but as a standalone emotion in which the angered person submerges, it is a destroyer of lives. At some point, the better approach about the feelings you encounter when realizing that your family caused a lot of your problems isn't just anger in a vacuum. The correct attitude is grief. It can be grief for what you needed as a child and were not given, or for what you were given that was not needed. It can be and often is for both. Grief is the path to relief, but sadly enough, grief is much more painful than anger. That pain, though, is a miracle of a gift. It is, as Khalil Gibran said, the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. With that kind of understanding, the understanding that is afforded by healthy grief, comes the kind of acceptance that allows you to move on without resentment. It is the kind of acceptance that can pave the way to the only thing that will ever really heal childhood wounds: forgiveness. Please note that when I say forgiveness, I'm not making it synonymous with forgetting. You don't ever have to forget the pain that was inflicted on you, but if you don't move through the grief and then on to forgiveness, the burdens of your childhood will forever cause some level of anguish in your life. And really much, much worse, it can lead you to live your entire life without ever really knowing who you are outside the role your family assigned you. The idea is that whatever the shortcomings in your family, whatever abuse or neglect or mistreatment you lived with, your goal is to rise above it and to refuse to allow your past to have power over your future. As cliche as it sounds, the objective here is to rise above. And in climbing that ladder, the two most important rungs are grief and forgiveness. The really positive thing about the forgiveness is that it is the state of mind that allows you to live without burdensome anger and unearned guilt. Even if current family members continue attempts to saddle you with the role they need you to be in, you'll be able to push that aside with relative ease. No more need to rescue your family from the truth about their actions, and no more desire to rescue them either. Forgiveness rids you of the need for illusion about your family and about yourself. I doubt that it's possible to completely graduate from stage one. The family impression on our thinking is in many ways indelible. To a greater or lesser degree, most people will be bound to it. But the fact that we likely can't overcome it completely does not mean that we can't make enormous, life-changing strides. People do it all the time. Whoever you are, regardless of what happened in your family of origin, you are not an exception. Change is possible for those who want it. That change is your job. And now for stage two. However your family life went, so does your life with women tend to go. As a matter of fact, an exercise I've done over the years with my clients in troubled relationships is to have them write down everything in detail that bothers or hurts them most about the way their wife or girlfriend treats them. Then I have them write down everything their parents did that bothers or hurts them the most. And then I ask them to compare the two lists. If you wanted to, you could pause this podcast right now and do it yourself. Most people find that the two lists contain eerily uncomfortable, similar items. As I said earlier, we tend to recreate our family of origin throughout our lives. Harville Hendrix, a gynocentric psychologist with a lot of bad ideas, nonetheless came up with one good one. He called it the Imago model of relationships. The theory behind Imago, or an unconsciously sought-after reflected image of one or both of your parents, is that we are programmed to seek a repeat of our dysfunctional family relationships in our romantic pursuits, and then seek a corrective experience in the romantic coupling. In other words, we pick a romantic partner with the same control, judgment, and abuse tendencies as one or both of our sick parents, and then try to fix them. In doing so, we not only pursue a remedy for the immediate problem of our relationship, we are also unconsciously trying to heal from the abuses of childhood. Our problem, insists Hendrix, is that we're doing the right thing in the wrong way. Because Hendrix's target audience is women, though, his suggested remedies consist of a bunch of ineffectual nonsense that hinges on burying the nature of the relationship problems in even more denial, even fantasizing that if you pretend your partner is making sense, even when she's coming directly from the left field parking lot, the problem will magically go away. It really is nonsense, but it is nonsense that sold millions of copies of his books to women. Not wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I suggest that Hendrix's model is quite useful, even if his techniques are rubbish. The corrective experience comes not from telling the imago of your sick parents that they are making sense, but of rejecting their flawed thinking, standing your ground, and being prepared and willing to see them exit if they can't handle it. That is where the solution comes. As children, we can't fight back. And even when children do fight back, they can't win. Hendrix missed a grand opportunity to send a very healing and healthy challenge to people because he wanted to appeal to women. Since the problem was abuse in the family of origin, which the child could not defend against, the corrective experience is the adult encountering the same problem and defending themselves successfully. It's the only thing that makes any sense at all if you think the Imago model is correct. Doing this in a healthy way in the context of an adult relationship is hard for most men. Not only are we going up against the mirror image of our dysfunctional parents, we are also now up against the full force of gynocentrism that has been pounded into us from birth. All of our programming to agree with women on fear of losing them, which Hendricks exploits in every chapter of his books, combines with every childhood insecurity and fear we have. The synergy of these forces is formidable. But alas, the opportunity to move through stage 2 is also here staring us in the face. Work in stage 2 is certainly made easier by some success with work in stage 1. If we can say no to the faulty scripts of our childhood, we have a weapon. That leaves us with mainly the gynocentrism to contend with. And we do it much in the same way as we do in stage 1. In a nutshell, stage 2 is being able to say no to a woman or to reject her abuse and mistreatment without anger or guilt, or at least with a bare minimum of these hindrances. And this is where I get to make a proclamation with certainty. In these times, there is no path to self-respect and well-being for men without the red pill. Matter of fact, I think that's so important, I'll say it again. There is no path to self-respect and well-being for men without the red pill. Blue pill thinking is toxic. It is a corrosive that eats away self-respect, dictates a life of pointless sacrifice, and robs men of their one and only identity. Understanding gynocentrism, both in men and women, and rejecting its sickest mandates is as crucial as understanding and rejecting the family dynamics that put you in a role that was robbing your life and vitality. No psychologist would ever tell you that you could be in complete denial about family dysfunction, abuse, and injustice and avoid the consequences. I'm simply extending that same rational thinking to the world of men's lived experience with women. Without the red pill, the only thing you can have is financial, physical, psychological, and emotional slavery. The only way that you can refute that is with what I call a wino's denial. Find a hopeless drunk with failing organs and living in squalor. Offer him a case of his drink of choice, and he will almost certainly tell you that he's happy. But do you really believe in the harshness and brutality of his circumstances that he is genuinely happy? No, he has happiness confused with embracing the instrument of his death. The same holds true for blue pill men. Men who spend their whole lives drawing all their self-respect, all their worth, by how much they sacrifice for women whose love is expressed by constantly demanding more. Ask that guy if he's happy, and then don't be offended when he answers with the lie that he is. He's lying to himself, too, just like the wino. That's the thing about red pills. They don't leave much room for lying to yourself or to anyone else. Now, just as I noted about families, digging in your heels and defending yourself with rage and resentment is definitely better than not defending yourself at all. But it pales in comparison to standing your ground in a state of peace. Rejecting gynocentric compliance is essential. Rejecting it with a baseball bat is not. One thing is certain about almost all women: they will give you abundant opportunities to practice. It may take you a few or even a few hundred attempts at standing your ground from a place of peace. But in the meantime, you can take solace in the fact that standing up at all puts you on the right path. There is no wrong way to say no to a woman. There is no right way to be shamed into a woman's control. And that is it for the overview of Stage 2 of the Road to Self-Respect and Well-Being. I'll be signing out for now, but we'll come back with Stages 3 and 4 in my next podcast. Till then, as always, I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.